Thank you very much, Mr. Boni, and thank you to EIF for the invitation to be here today. Yeah, as you mentioned, I work for the RIPE NCC, which perhaps not everyone is familiar with. We're actually the regional internet registry for Europe, Middle East, and Central Asia. And that means we distribute and register IP addresses, autonomous system numbers, so very much on the technical side of internet administration. So I guess some of my reflections here today are coming from that technical community side of the stakeholder mix. Certainly not speaking for the technical community, but just coming from that. I think the technical community has been really one of the very strong supporters of the IGF since its inception, both sort of financially, but also in terms of trying to participate, trying to contribute. And I think that's been a very natural progression, in part because that IGF and the multi-stakeholder, bottom-up, inclusive ethos that it's built on very much came from the processes that the technical community had developed. That sort of is really noted quite explicitly. I was looking again last night in the Tunis agenda. It says the IGF will build on those internet governance processes, and particularly the way that different stakeholders can work complementarily with each other in that. I think what we see in perhaps some of the difference we see between maybe how that's done in the IETF or regional internet registries and their communities and the IGF is maybe it's done with a little bit more confidence, a little bit more ruthlessness in those technical communities where there's a need to focus on specifics to sort of limit the discussion to really achieve something. And I think when we talk about the fact that we don't have a host for this year yet, and that there is this discussion a lot of years about what the sort of ongoing role of the IGF is. One of the big issues and one of the big problems that creates is that process, that multi-stakeholder process in the IGF itself doesn't get the opportunity to mature and to become more confident. And that's really what needs to happen. This process needs to grow and become confident in itself and understand the role that the IGF can play. I think that also brings us to the other difference between, say, the IETF and the IGF, and that's that the IETF and the RAR communities are policy-making venues. They actually make decisions, they reach decisions they're similar to that, in that sense, to legislatures or to other standard-setting organizations. That's not what the IGF is, and it was never intended to be that. And I think and as Sandra said, I understand the push to have more tangible outcomes, and I think that is something important, and there has been good work that's happened on that in the past years. There is a danger there in trying to make the IGF something that it's not. It's not a design that is ever going to be able to provide that decision-making certainty that others do because they're designed for that purpose. I think in a sense there's a bit of a marketing problem or a communications problem because we've heard for many years that idea that the IGF is a talk shop and that's said in a very sort of disparaging way. But I'm coming back again repeating what Sandra was saying here, that really that was the intent, and that's a really important role that the IGF can play. We need to sort of embrace that with a lot more confidence, again, to say, yes, this is not a decision-making venue, but it does feed into all of those other decision-making venues, whether that's an ICANN process or whether that's a parliamentary process. One of the things that I think we can think about when we talk about what happens between IGF meetings is saying and reflecting on, okay, how does that IGF discussion, that process, feed back into whatever my decision-making venue of choice is. With RIPE NCC and our RIPE community, which is the policy-making community that surrounds the RIPE NCC, we've certainly made efforts to help our community members come to the IGF. We've funded their participation, their attendance. We've tried to feed back the thoughts that they've had, the reflections they've had to our community. And it is a valuable opportunity. There was a workshop at this last IGF on IPv6 adoption, which is obviously something very relevant to our community and our membership. But it was a discussion that you wouldn't have had at a RIPE meeting, where most of the attendees are operators. It gives a very different perspective, and by having our community there, they're able to bring that perspective back to the actual policy-making venue, and that can then feed in. I think the same could be said of any other policy-making venue or mechanism where you can say, these IGF discussions provide perspective and insight that's not otherwise available to those making the decisions here. And that's the value of the IGF, because the internet, and the IGF was formed in response to this, the internet throws up many new challenges for policy making that really we weren't fully understanding at the time, and I think even now as we see AI, IoT, all of these different challenges, we're still facing new policy making challenges that we don't fully understand and that require that joint communication and different perspectives that the IGF can provide. So I'll leave it there because I think that I know others want to join the discussion, but yeah, thank you again for the opportunity to be here.